Hi chess fans, and welcome to today's video. We are going to be discussing how to execute an opening trap called Le Gall's Mate, and more importantly, how to defend against it. Let's take a look. The opening trap we are going to look at today was introduced by a French chess player who was born in 1702, and his name was de Le Gall. He actually has a longer name, but out of fear of mispronouncing it horribly, I am going to refer to him as Le Gall, and the trap we are looking at today is Le Gall's Mate. So this starts off with white playing pawn to e4 and black responding pawn to e5, and white then develops the knight to f3. Black plays pawn to d6, and we call this the Philidor defense. And there are more popular replies for black. It is more common to see knight to c6 or even knight to f3, but the Philidor is still played today, and it certainly solves the problem of the undefended pawn on e4. Okay, next up, white develops the light squared bishop to c4, and black pins the knight on f3 by playing bishop to g4. When we discuss opening principles, it's thought that developing the knights before the bishop is generally a good rule of thumb, and maybe the dark pieces kind of went against the grain, but they do have the idea that the knight should not move because that would leave the queen hanging, being attacked by the bishop. Okay, next up, white develops the knight to c3, and black plays g6. And already, white definitely has a lead in development with both knights and a bishop being developed, while the dark pieces have only developed the bishop on g4. And the reason behind this g6 move is because the dark pieces are looking for a good spot for this bishop to be developed. It could go to e7, but it could not jump over the pawn and move out further on that diagonal, and maybe that is one of the negative sides of playing the Philidor defense with d6. So here we see the opening trap being set, and it starts with the knight on f3 capturing the pawn on e5. And this leaves white's queen hanging and able to be captured by the bishop, but this is actually the bait that white is hoping the black pieces will take. And let's start by looking at what happens if the bishop does capture the queen. So in this position, black has fallen for the trap and is now set up for the Le Gall checkmate. And in this position, it is white to move and checkmate in 2 moves. So feel free to pause your video and try to find the forced checkmate for the white pieces in 2 moves. Okay, so the first move white is going to play is going to be a check. He's going to move the bishop to f7, check, and important to note that that bishop is protected by the knight on e5, and this will force the king to move to e7. And now we have a checkmate in 1 move. White is simply going to move the other knight to d5 and deliver a pretty spectacular checkmate. So not every game do you get to sacrifice your queen in order to checkmate your opponent, and certainly not this early in the game. So it's a very surprising attack if your opponent has not seen it before, and something that's easy to fall into. Now let's take a look at how we can avoid this trap with the dark pieces. We are back at the critical position when white sets the trap by capturing the pawn on e5 with the knight, allowing his queen to be captured. And best play for black in this position to avoid the checkmate that we just saw is to simply realize that this knight captured that pawn for free and simply capture that knight with the pawn. And although white can capture the bishop with the queen and white won a pawn, this is obviously much better than getting checkmated in 2 moves, and this is one way to avoid the trap. Let's go back a little bit further and see how black could have avoided this trap a few moves prior if they were aware of this. After the opening moves, e4, e5, knight to f3, d6 the Philidor, bishop to c4, bishop to g4, pinning the knight, and knight to c3. Black's reply to this was g6, trying to find a home for that dark square bishop, but a better move, especially if black is aware that they are in danger of Le Gall's mate, is to simply develop the knight to c6. We know that developing our minor pieces, and in particular our knights, very early in the game is beneficial to us. And what this move does is, in addition to developing the knight, it also provides some extra defense for the pawn on e5. And now, if white goes for the same trick that we saw previously, black's actually going to get an advantage. And again, black shouldn't capture the queen because the same checkmate that we saw previously, starting with bishop captures on f7, will work. But in this position, black has two options to capture the knight back on e5, and much better than capturing with the pawn and leaving the bishop hanging is to capture with the knight that was on c6, and black won a piece for a pawn and has a winning advantage. In this position, the queen will not capture the bishop because with the knight on e5, that bishop is protected, and black has a healthy advantage and will have good chances to win this game. Thanks for tuning in to today's video on Le Gall's Mate. I hope you found this useful and wish you success in executing it in your games. Stay tuned for future videos, and I'll see you next time.